Hello, this is a speech in consecutive about remote air traffic control. And there's a couple of names you should probably write down, which I'm afraid I will mangle because they are names of places in Sweden. One of them is Örnsköldsvik, and one of them is Sundsvall. Okay, here we go. I'll start now. Ladies and gentlemen, as an interpreter, and in my profession we're increasingly confronted with remote interpreting, I am of course interested in anything that can be done in remote and the pros and cons of that mode of doing things. So I was very interested to read an article recently about a world first, which is that a small regional airport in Sweden, in a place called Örnsköldsvik, no longer has an air traffic control tower. Instead, it is being controlled remotely from 170 kilometers away in a place called Sundsvall. Now that airport in Sundsvall has a remote tower center. And in that remote tower center, the air traffic controllers sit surrounded by banks of video screens. The windows of the building have been replaced by video screens, which are displaying real-time images of what's happening on the tarmac 170 kilometers away. So they have a 360-degree view of everything that's happening on the landing strips. The technology should be reliable. It is Saab technology, and it relies on 14 high-definition cameras which are installed on a mast, and that mast also has all the other technology that's necessary, for example, microphones and sensors that can pass on meteorological data. So that's the setup. Now you might be wondering why one would want to have remote air traffic control. And the answer in Sweden is relatively straightforward. It's a very large country and there is a huge need for infrastructure, because otherwise people live in places that are very remote and they can become landlocked. Sweden, in fact, has 36 small airports, and all of them run at a loss. So one of the great advantages of remote air traffic control is that it's more efficient than having people on the spot. It can lead to budget savings. Otherwise, if you were not able to make these budget savings, perhaps some of the small regional airports would have to close down, or they would have to limit the number of flights that they can accept. So there is an important social aspect here, that the remote air traffic control could actually allow jobs to be saved at these airports. The second advantage of remote air traffic control is that cameras are more reliable and more precise than the human eye, and they are more sensitive than the human eye. This allows the cameras to function for about 2 hours more every day, in particular because the visibility afforded by the camera is good even when it gets dark. And you can imagine that in a very northern country such as Sweden, that's going to be important, particularly during the long winter nights. The third advantage of remote air traffic control is that the technology produced by Saab compares the real-time image with a reference image of what was happening on the tarmac all the time, and that means that it's able to detect any unexpected changes. For example, if there were an intruder or an unexpected object on the landing strip, and then it would sound an alert. So this gives improved safety and security for everybody at the airport. However, it seemed to me that there are some fairly obvious risks involved in remote air traffic control. The first of these that sprang to mind for me was the weather. It seemed to me that in a country like Sweden, you might expect very poor weather to affect the mast with its 14 cameras. What if there was heavy snowfall? And I mean literally heavy, so heavy that it broke the mast. Will there always be engineers on site who are available to come and fix that very quickly? The second risk, as I see it, is that there could be some kind of breakdown of the technology, an electrical problem, something that means that the camera no longer works or the microphone no longer works or what have you. And I think in today's world, we're probably all aware of the risks of relying too heavily on technology. And the third risk that sprang to mind was the risk of hacking. Perhaps I've watched too many American thrillers, but I imagine you have also seen these films where a camera image is replaced with a fake. And in this case of remote air traffic control, that could lead to a terrible accident. So it may seem far-fetched, but it certainly occurred to me. However, the Swedish authorities have accepted that this technology is at least as safe and as secure as human air traffic controllers who are on the spot. Still, it seems to me that we're a very long way away from using remote air traffic control at a large airport. I can't imagine somewhere like London Heathrow using remote air traffic control technology. However, and by way of conclusion, I was interested to hear that the second largest airport in Sweden is looking into using remote air traffic control, not as its primary system, but as a contingency plan. So instead of having to think, oh, what if we had remote air traffic control and it went wrong, they are thinking, could a remote system be brought in as a backup if our primary system failed because of a fire or some other kind of systems failure? Thank you.